Okay, in the last video, we created a uSpringArm component pointer called CameraBoom. We created a force inline getCameraBoom const function which returns CameraBoom, and we also constructed in our constructor the CameraBoom. We attached it to the root component. We set its target arm length to 300, and we set its usePawnControlRotation property to true. Now we'd like to create a camera. So here in the private section, just under the CameraBoom variable, let's declare a pointer of type uCameraComponentPointer called followCamera. Now we're going to have to forward declare uCameraComponent as the compiler doesn't recognize it. So we'll use the class keyword. We'll also give this a uProperty macro. And we're going to give it the same exact uProperty macro that we gave to CameraBoom. And finally, we'll give this a comment saying camera that follows the character. Now we'd like to create a getter for this. So it's going to be force inline. It's going to return a uCameraComponent pointer. And it's going to be called getFollowCamera. It's not changing anything, so we're going to make this a const function, and we're going to return followCamera. We'll go ahead and give this a comment as well, saying returns followCamera subobject. Now, just like with the CameraBoom, we created a pointer, but we never actually created an object. We're going to do that in the constructor. So here in shooterCharacter.cpp, just under our construction of the CameraBoom, we're going to create the followCamera. So let's do a comment that says create a followCamera. And we're going to say followCamera equals, and we're going to construct it using createDefaultSubObject. Now for the type, we're going to use uCameraComponent. And then we need to pass in text to name this component. We're going to call it followCamera. Now we would like to attach followCamera to the CameraBoom, and we can do so using setupAttachment. So followCamera, and we're going to call setupAttachment. Now before we call setupAttachment, you're going to see that we're getting the same error for followCamera that we got for CameraBoom. Namely, we need to include the header for uCameraComponent. Let's pull up the documentation and look up uCameraComponent. Here we have uCameraComponent, and it tells us that the include header is camera/cameracomponent.h. We'll copy that and we'll paste that right up at the top so that our uCameraComponent type is recognized by the compiler. Now we can see inside the parentheses of setupAttachment, if we hit Control-Shift-Space, Visual Studio will show us the parameters we need for this function. The first is the component, and the second is an optional socket name. For the component, we're going to use CameraBoom. And for the second, we're going to specify the socket on the CameraBoom. A SpringArm component contains a socket at the end of it that we can attach the camera to. And SpringArm component has a static variable that contains the name of that socket. It's called socket name. So we're going to use uSpringArm component socket name. You can hover over this and see that it says the name of the socket at the end of the spring arm looking back towards the spring arm origin. That's perfect for attaching a camera to. So we're going to use that name to specify the socket that we're going to attach followCamera to. Now finally, we're going to get followCamera and access the BUsePawnControlRotation variable, and in this case we're going to set it to false. We don't want the camera to rotate relative to the arm. We simply want the camera to follow the camera boom's rotation. So we're going to add a comment here that says camera does not rotate relative to arm. And for the line above it, we're going to say attach camera to end of boom. Okay, so we've created our camera. Let's go ahead and compile this. Back in the editor, we can see that our shooter character BP contains a camera component. You can't see the camera boom unless you select it, and then you can see the red line that shows that the camera is attached to the end of the camera boom. So it's important to remember that if we ever want to adjust the camera relative to the player, we should adjust the camera boom, and the camera being attached to the end of the camera boom will follow it. For example, if we select camera boom and we change the target arm length, you'll see that we're changing the length of the spring arm and the camera is staying attached at that socket at the end of it, which is what we want. I'll go ahead and set that back to 300. So this concludes our video. We've now added a camera and attached it to the spring arm. We're now ready to continue in the next video scripting out behavior for our character class.